sure it's on, y'all. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm here to introduce some amazing librarians. I'm Jennifer Thrift, and I have the privilege of being in the same district as these wonderful two ladies. They are presenting Bougie or Broke, I love the title, for new librarians, and I am so excited for them to share with you what they have learned from their experiences. So, to give you a little background on them, Heidi Benton has served as an elementary teacher librarian for 5 years. Previously, she worked as a classroom teacher with me, which was fun. She taught at my school. ESOL teacher and reading interventionist in North Carolina, Connecticut, and South Carolina. In 2021, she earned the SCASL's Intellectual Freedom Award for her work in promoting and celebrating inclusive library practices. And this is her 18th year in public education. And then Marianne is in her 5th year in Charleston County as well. I think y'all were in the cohort together, right? Yes. Okay. She has worked at 2 Title I schools where she brought on specifically to help transform library spaces. She prides herself on being resourceful and making the best from the mess. So I welcome Heidi and Marianne.
Thank you for coming today. We're excited to see you. When Marianne and I decided to present together, we really wanted to give information to incoming librarians or librarians who maybe have been teaching for a year or so, and just reflecting on our experiences in our schools. We both moved to completely different schools when we became librarians. Marianne had the biggest move of all, moving from high school to an elementary school program. And then as we started to build our presentation, we realized based on our types of schools and the socioeconomic demographics of our students, we had very different approaches to revitalizing stale library programs. So we wanted to give you both perspectives in our presentation. And again, this is us. I'm at James B. Edwards Elementary, and then I am giving you the perspective of a bougie library. I moved into a school that had money. There was money. It was not being funneled to the library, so a lot of my work in the last 5 years was convincing all the stakeholders that the library benefits everyone in the school, and the library deserves more funding.
I am at a rural school in Charleston County, and there is very little funding. We do not have a PTO. We don't have parents who have enough time to have a PTO. And the library for the past 2 years after COVID, the librarian pretty much sat in a locked office. The library door was not open. If you wanted to come in the library, you had to ring a doorbell, and she may or may not have let you in the library. So I was coming into a space that was underused and very neglected for the past, since basically COVID, but with no money to do the things that I wanted to do.
So we had our own unique challenges. So this is our steps that we're going to go through, our methods. Just want to reiterate right at the beginning that this takes time. None of this that we accomplished was accomplished in 1 year, 2 years, or 3. We're just getting to the point now where our libraries are functional and where we want them to be. So we are going to start with budget and expectations. Okay, first thing, find out what the established budget is early in the year. Hopefully find out the established budget when you interview. There is an allocated amount of money per student from the school district. Find out if your administration adds additional funding from their general operating funds or whatever your school district calls different monies and different accounts. You want to see if you're starting at the baseline of the district. You want to see if there's possibility to add on to that.
Yep. And also asking about schools in your area, so close, nearby other schools that are similar to your demographics, what are their budgets? Because as you're starting to have those conversations where you're advocating for more money, it's really helpful if you can see your admin and say, this school, they're getting $7 per student and I'm only getting $5, and don't we want to make sure that our students are getting the best? And if you are in an area with school choice, find out where your school loses students to. And if you can compare your library program to where you're losing students, oftentimes that is what admin wants to know, because they want to figure out how to get that base back to their school. So finding out, and it takes a little bit of digging, it takes some relationship building to be able to ask those questions, but then you can say to your admin, $2 more per pupil would get me this many books. That would put us on par with this school. I really think that's something we could consider.
And And then we suggest working with your bookkeeper again to find out the exact numbers. When I started at my school 5 years ago, the principal and the bookkeeper did not know that there were supposed to be district funds allocated to the library. So we got that rolling. And grants.
Yes, so if you have a grant liaison, become their best friend. They will help you find grants that you might not otherwise be able to find yourself. And a lot of times it seems intimidating to be able to write those grants, but once you have that initial information about the demographics of your area and your school, you can just plug and play for other grants that you're applying to. This year alone, I've been able to get 10 Osmos for my library that we can use the iPads that we already have to go with Osmos, to have Steam. I was able to get a camera from Donors Choose where I can take pictures of the kids' book recommendations and the kids get to see themselves reading so that when they come in the library they can see what their friends have read, and that will increase circulation. I'm currently applying for a grant for Spheros to have little robots that the kids can use. And then my school, I'm here basically on a grant. They paid for my entire conference visit, hotel, everything that was grant funded. We have a partnership with Charleston Stage where the kids have acting workshops and they get to go see 3 plays a year. And we got $10,000 in fine arts equipment all through a grant. So once you find out what grants are out there, especially if you're in an area that's not get a lot of funding otherwise, there are many, many organizations that want to help schools that don't have other resources. It's just a matter of finding out where those grants are and then going through the process of applying for them.
Do you want to take a lead on this one?
Sure. So when you first, as a new librarian, walk into a space, you kind of want to ask yourself, how do I feel? How does this space make me feel? What do I notice? And if the very first thing you notice is not the books on the shelves, that's not going to be what your stakeholders notice either. So if you can't find something, probably nobody else can. And you want to make sure that you do what you need to do to have signage that helps your patrons find what they're looking for, that things are easy to navigate, that it's clear, that it's welcoming, and that it makes you feel happy because you're the one spending the most time in there. If it makes you feel happy, you're guaranteed that it's going to make your students and your stakeholders feel happy as well.
I think the bottom point is incredibly important too. Do you like being in the space? I took the position at my school, being teacher librarian, sight unseen. I went into the library after I accepted the position. And it just, at the state it was at, it didn't feel good. It felt dusty, it felt kind of moldy, it felt super crowded with furniture and lots of decorations, and it just felt like a lot needed to change. So always ask yourself, do you like being in your space? And if you don't, we have suggestions for making changes.
So when I started at Ellington this year, this is what the shelves looked like, and they all had that peeling, awful, die-cut attempt at signage. If you're a student coming into a library that no students have been in the past 2 years, and that's what you see, you're being told that you're not worth a shelf that looks put together. But because I didn't have any money, and I could not scrape that off, my mother spent 3 days in August scraping her fingers basically to the bone, trying to get that sticky tape off, and we could not do it. Acetone did not work, rubbing alcohol did not work, paint thinner did not work. And we were kind of left with a, well, clearly can't get rid of it, we gotta cover it up. So I used bulletin board paper, and I covered it up. And that ended up being the color theme that I used through the rest of the library. It allowed me to put labels so that the kids can more easily find the books. And they walk in and they go, oh, it's put together. I'm not just being given the bottom of the barrel garbage. I'm actually being presented with something that makes me want to look at that shelf. And so something as simple as bulletin board paper really, truly helped to transform those shelves.
Don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves. My library was 4 different colors of paint on the walls, and I think because our library was so neglected and kind of off the radar, when I asked my principal, can my husband and I come in on a Sunday and repaint some of these walls so they're all one color? She said, absolutely, and it just felt immediately better. One of the colors was like a nicotine stained yellow, and I could not abide by it.
This is an example of using your space wisely. So when picture books. If you know picture books, you know that they are tall, they are not small. And in that shelving, everything was turned on its side so you could not see the spines. But again, I did not have money for shelves. So I waited until another library was getting rid of their shelves. I got their old shelves. I shifted the picture books over, and now I have this amazing area the kids see right when they walk in that I can fill with displays for the month, for themes that are going on in our school, and you can't not see the fronts of the books because now they're all forward-facing for whatever I feel like highlighting at that particular time. This is from this month, and so it's Women's History Month, and so I'm able to get these books circulating a ton because that's what the kids see, and they get excited to see what books are there in their face available for them. Even my students who would tend to say that they don't like looking for books, they'll go to that section because it's right there and it's super easy for them. And that goes back to evaluating your space, evaluating what's there, and finding those small things that you can do to make sure that your students can see what they're going to be interested in.
All right, once you assess your space, you assess your collection. Take a look at your books. Reading is a huge part of revitalizing the SAIL library program. When I walked into the library, we had thousands and thousands of books, but they were all very, very old. They were all crammed into the shelves, and it's obvious children had not been pulling them off the shelves for a very long time, possibly decades in some of the cases. So when you're reading, you need to make a decision based on the funding you have. We talked about finding out what kind of funding is available for you and searching for other sources of funding. In my position, knowing that there was money in the school and knowing that we had a great parent presence with volunteers, parents taking kids to lunch, moms helping with uniforms, I knew that if I weeded aggressively and then my community saw empty shelves when all of those books that weren't being checked out for 20 plus years were pulled and all the books that weren't being checked out for 10 plus years were pulled, I knew that that would make a greater visual impact, and I hope that would accelerate funding to the library. Marianne has a different case.
If I were to weed everything that had been neglected, I would have no books on my shelf. So I needed to, make the strategic decision of which books are moldy and definitely need to go for health reasons. Which books could I tape up and let them limp along because they're student favorites, and which ones truly are never going to be touched. And I had to sacrifice a little bit of my per pupil book ratio in order to help to advocate for more funding. But I'm not there yet. I don't have that funding, and my per pupil ratio right now is less than I would like it to be. But when I have conversations and I can say, I'm supposed to have 15 books per student, and because of the age of the collection, I only have 12 books per student, what are you going to do to fix this? And I bring it up again and again when I meet with my admin. It stops being a point of a squeaky wheel, and it starts being, oh, but that school down the road, they have this. And it helps me to advocate. And so it's a sacrifice that I had to make to have a less than average library for a little bit of time. But I also needed to make the impact that not all books need to be around, especially if your average copyright date is 1991. Probably need to get rid of some books.
Okay, another part of revitalizing a library program is your relationships with everyone in the building and setting boundaries as well. Every decision in the library must be made in the best interest of the students. If you are going to teachers, if you are going to the principal, if you are going to parents with an idea, with a proposal, with something you want to implement, it needs to be in the best interest of the students. That way, you're going to get less argument back. Okay? Everything we do in the building should be in the best interest of the students. You're not in charge of that. Are in charge of making sure every decision the library is making, scheduling, funding, everything, you're part of that decision, and you are making sure that everything you propose is in the best interest of the students, not in the best interest of teachers' schedules, not in the best interest of your schedule, not in the best interest of reducing conflict with people who might not like change, always in the best interest of the students. Administration, good. There's bad, there's in the middle, good can change to bad, bad can change to good. It's kind of all over the place. But with your administrator, as you start to build a relationship, it will get easier to ask tough questions. questions. We talked about asking tough questions with funding. There are other tough questions we can ask with moving to a more flexible schedule if you're on a fully fixed schedule. But just build that relationship so those tough questions can be asked in a safe place and you're still maintaining your relationship with your administration. It takes time. I would always try to make sure that I had consistent pressure on my admin, just gentle pressure that I am moving forward with this library and we need to move forward. So she wouldn't forget me. They have a lot going on, administrators. So I just tried to make sure I was always in rotation. She always saw my face and that she knew what my goal always was. She might get tired of seeing me, but eventually she would relent. Marianne has talked about keeping up with the Joneses as well. It does help to know what's going on in the schools down the road, up the road, and seeing, are they an exemplary library collection? Are we below average? Are we 2 miles apart? Why is that happening? Good question to pose to your administrator. Whenever you bring problems to your administrator, I would always have a solution ready. The only person in the building who makes more decisions than the teacher is the administrator. And if you can take one decision off their plate with a solution that is in the best interest of the students in the building, you're helping them out a lot and you're going to be able to move faster with improving your library program.
As a new librarian, coming from high school, this was the piece that I struggled with the most because at the high school level, there is that chain of command and rarely do you ever talk to the administrator. You talk to all the other people. And then I moved down to elementary school where the chain of command was me straight to admin. And I really had a tension that I had to, figure out how to deal with that being foreign to me talking to administrators. And at my previous school before where I am now, I realized that when I ended up needing to leave for my mental health because our goals were completely disparate, because they wanted me to be a planning period for teachers on the related arts schedule, and I wanted to be a librarian who promoted literacy and had relationships with students. And we weren't ever going to get onto the same path. And if I had known then what I know now, the very first question I would have asked in my interview is, what are your goals for the library? And if they don't match with your vision for the library, that should probably be a little bit of a red flag, that there's gonna either need to be a lot of work and a lot of communication, and you don't need to be intimidated, you need to be proud, and you have SCASL with all of their resources to really back you up with the data that you need to have those conversations. But I wish that I had started those conversations before I got to the point where I was miserable every day on this just constant loop of teaching classes and not ever actually being able to do the things I wanted to do as a librarian. If that's something that that you're happy on that related arts schedule, awesome. Just make sure that your goals are in line with what your administration wants from you so that you can find the best fit for you. I had a former principal who she was like, you know what, if you're not happy at our school, come talk to me. I'll happily find a different place for you. And that's always really stuck with me, that you never need to be miserable where you are. That admin will usually work with you to help you find a different school if you're unhappy. But nobody benefits from a miserable librarian.
All right, staff relationships. Small ways to improve staff relationships.
So plants, things that bring, a green thumb in, a teacher who might not come into your library otherwise, and they ask you what type of plants you have growing and you have a conversation, they're more likely to possibly come back in or bring students into your space. Music kind of has that same effect. So does it smelling nice. If it smells like mold and mildew, no one's going to want to hang out in your space. The students enjoy it when it smells good. Teachers love chocolate and coffee. And so when you are first starting to build those relationships and you are trying to establish that trust so that they're more willing to collaborate with you, and so you are able to collaborate with them, little things like chocolate in a mailbox with, hey, these are the things I could do for you, are more likely to help build those relationships. Because ultimately, you want the teachers to trust you, you want to trust your teachers, because that's what helps the students. The students benefit when everybody is working together like a finely oiled machine, but when you're new, there's a lot of PR work that you have to do to get to that point. You have to market yourself, you have to market what you offer, and you have to market your library, particularly when you're in a space that was already have that relationship with the library. But if your door has been locked for 2 years, they don't understand what a librarian can do. And so those are small things that bring them in their busy day, and then you can show them all of the amazing things that the library can do for them and for their students.
Another part of building relationships is also maintaining boundaries. As the media specialist, you are not in charge of every single thing in that building that plugs into the wall, and you are going to have to teach your teachers that. So you are building relationships, you are bringing them in the library, but at the same time, I mean, you don't know what their relationship with the last librarian was. They're coming into a relationship with you, probably with preconceived notions. So at the same time you're building a relationship, you're also establishing boundaries for your own mental health and to make sure you're doing your job, which is serving the students first. Do you want to take your last
Yes, and so I'll hit on this. It's not bragging if it's true, is what our supervisor always says. And then as students exit, boast your day. So I'm on a fixed schedule. The teachers come and pick up their students at the door. I made the decision several years ago that instead of just reporting the student's behavior, which is usually the teacher's first question, well, how were they today? That makes me sound like a babysitter. I'm saying if, your kids were well behaved when I was watching them, that's not teaching. I wouldn't walk up to another teacher and the very first question I ask is, how were your kids behaved today? What did they learn today? And so I always start the conversation when teachers come and pick up their kids with what we did that day. Hey, these were our learning targets today. This is what we worked on. They were really excited to learn about pollinators. We had so much fun looking at this 360 video of a bee. Oh yeah, we're learning about pollinators in class. We just read this book last week. Awesome, they're gonna be so excited. I never spoke to that teacher necessarily one-to-one on what they were teaching, but I knew what they were teaching because I did my homework. And I could create lessons that align with what they were teaching. That teacher sees my experience, they see my expertise, they see my resources, and they walk away knowing that for that time that their kids were in the library, they were doing something that aligned with their curriculum, and they know that their kids benefited from the time that they were there. It takes away that babysitter mentality of a related arts teacher. If there are behavior problems, certainly I will let the teacher know, but that's not their job. I'm a teacher. I can handle behavior problems the same way they handle behavior problems in the classroom. I'm not just gonna babysit and tattletale. I'm going to be a teacher. Because a lot of times, when you're on a fixed schedule, related arts is not always seen as a teacher. And that to me, I hate being called a media specialist because it makes it sound like I'm in charge of things that plug into walls. That's the IT's job, not mine. I want to be called a teacher librarian. And I want that teacher word to come first. Because I take a lot of pride in being a teacher librarian. Don't call me a media specialist, don't call me anything else. Call me a teacher librarian, because I'm on equal playing field with every other teacher in that school.
Preach. So building on that, building staff relationships, we want to talk also about collaboration. Marianne said she's on a fixed schedule. Our library is on a fully flexible schedule. So collaboration for me is more intersecting with teachers, finding the teachers who were smiling my first year there and asking them, hey, I hear you're doing frogs. You want to come do some frogs? Maybe we'll smash some apps together on iPads. Your students can have a digital product. Just got to start small. Our school was in a lot of transition when I started. Our principal was just starting her second year there. There had been a long-time principal who was beloved, who was kind of ousted from the position, so the teachers were not trustful of anything. They were really upset. They were in transition, just a lot going on mentally and emotionally. Look for the one who's smiling at you and start there. I was lucky also, our school is kind of set up like a pentagon, where our library is in the middle of the circle, and it's all glass all the way around. So automatically, when there would be a class and a teacher collaborating in the library, when other students would walk to recess and walk to lunch, other teachers and other students would see what was going on. Other students would ask their teachers, why aren't we in there? And that helps a lot with moving towards more collaboration. Again, it takes time. The teachers want to see that their colleague collaborated with you. They want to ask their colleague how the collaboration went, what went well, what went poorly. Did it all fall apart? If it fell apart, they're probably not going to collaborate with you for a good long time. If it went well, they're more likely to come in sooner. And Marianne has parallel collaboration.
Because I'm on a fixed schedule, I don't necessarily have time to meet with teachers because their planning is when I have their students. So what I like long-range plans, any form of curriculum that they have. So I'll go back and look at last year's long-range plans that they've posted and their lesson plans that they've posted, and I'll use that information to come alongside them. We might not ever have a conversation that that's what we've done, but I am able to build interest about that topic because I know what they're learning in the classroom. And thankfully right now in Charleston County, we are using an EL curriculum, and all of that is wide open for me to know. So I have all of their modules, I know their pacing, I know what they're teaching basically each week, and we don't have to have a conversation about that because it's all in the EL curriculum. And that common curriculum allows me to pull in really cool activities that go alongside what they're learning in the classroom. For example, in EL, I could see that they were learning about fossils. Well, I don't need to read a ton of books about fossils, but we can read a biography about Mary Anning, and then we can take chocolate chip cookies, and we can practice how to get the chocolate chips out of the cookie using toothpicks, and practice how hard it is to find fossils when you're having to dig and not break up your fossils. We can experience what Mary Anning experienced, and we can also eat a cookie. So I wasn't stepping on the teacher's toes, it was just continuing to build that excitement about learning, which at my school, Title I, high poverty, low levels of being on grade level for reading. We are 90% of our students are at least 1, if not 3 grade levels behind where they are supposed to be. Excitement is really what they need. The classroom teachers, they have that content. Those kids are gonna learn what they need to learn to be as successful as they can be. But they're not gonna get education excitement at home, so if I can build that in the library, I've done my job. And if they can go back to the classroom and be excited for just one more day about what they're learning, I've done my job. And some of our modules are 2 quarters worth of trees. No kindergarten wants to learn about trees for 2 quarters. They get real bored. So I bring in those resources that the South Carolina Library has for us, and we watch a video about trees, and we talk about it, and we look at pine cones. And anything interest building that I can bring in that way into my lessons, I'm helping my teachers because I've kept the kids interested.
All right, so again, we want to get all the stakeholders on board with revitalizing the library program and expanding it and putting the students at the best, doing everything in the best interest of the students. So we want to make sure we have the administrator, the families, the students, and the teachers. You want to make sure you're hitting every single group. Will you do that in 1 year? Absolutely not. Can you do it in 5? Absolutely yes. We also want to say that going into a bad situation is not all bad. Felt bad at the beginning, but going into a bad situation does give you a lot of leeway. You have a lot going on for you if you're in a situation that does not seem great. You have room to grow. You're going to possibly have more autonomy because if it's a bad situation, nobody has preconceived notions of what that library needs to be. So moving into a bad situation, good things can happen.
Yes. Everything is important. Also, manage your expectations. This is my library. I've done a lot of work to make the inside look great. Doesn't change the fact that the ceiling has been leaking for 4 weeks and no one has fixed it yet. And that's what my students get to walk past every day that they come into the library, is the dripping ceiling. So, not every day is gonna be the best day, and you can do everything you can to make it the best for you, and you're still gonna sometimes have a leaky ceiling. Don't let it get you down, you'll be all right.
It'll be okay. Our goal always is to make the library the heart of the school. It's the best room in the building. We want it to be the best room for all of our stakeholders. This is from the beginning of this school year, after about 2.5 years of working with our PTO and our endowment, we were able to get funding for $70,000 so we could revitalize our entire collection. It made a huge difference to these students. We had a big celebration, week-long, bubbles, balloons, red carpet, and everything, just welcoming them into their brand new space. So, heart of the school, always, whether you have money or not.
So we kind of gave you some resources just as a new librarian so that you're aware of the wonderful things that are out there for you. Other librarians are going to be your lifeline. If you have an opportunity to pop into veterans libraries strongly encourage you do so. I became an evaluator with SC Lead for the sole purpose of it would give me an opportunity to go into other people's libraries and steal their ideas. I have plants in my library. Well, we had a PD in her library and I stole the idea because I thought it was good. Every PD that I go to, I inevitably take something away from that library that I'm going to use. We have ninjas in our district that help move libraries when library projects are happening. I have never left a ninja job where I did not immediately go back and think of something that I could do in my library that would benefit the flow or benefit my day in and day out experiences. So really lean on other librarians, ask them what they're doing, try to see their spaces. It's so easy for us to feel like we're on our little library island, and a lot of times what you're missing is what all the other islands are doing around you that are really cool, that you can then improve your own space that way. If you have a print shop in your district, that's another really nice way to get visuals for your library where you don't perhaps have to spend as much money as if you were going through Dimco or something like that. You can do a lot with Canva, and you can do a lot with looking for free posters in regards to decorating your library space. And in a few minutes, there's gonna be a poster, or a picture of a poster at the end of a bookshelf. That's because the previous librarian loved that super tacky tape, and it left residue everywhere. Because I couldn't get rid of the residue, I needed to come up with a really inexpensive way to cover it to make the shelves look nice. So I went to Teaching Tolerance. They have a lot of really cool posters. I sent those posters to our print shop, laminated them, bam. Now you don't see the sticky residue, you see a Lizzo poster. That makes you feel happy, it makes you feel empowered, instead of sticky residue on the shelf, which does not make you feel empowered. So if you have a print shop or if you have inexpensive ways to get things printed, I highly encourage you to do that. If you are not familiar with the Book Wrangler, go follow everything he does. A lot of his items are for free. His items are all high interest, and he comes up with some of the most creative ways to promote literacy in your library, and you can use his ideas and not have to make everything from scratch yourself. And he's so transparent with sharing his stuff that it really, truly helps to make a beautiful library using his resources. And so here are some of those examples. So there's the Lizzo poster that I was referencing. The alphabet in the back, that's a Book Wrangler product that I put because sometimes kids have trouble remembering the alphabet when they're looking for books. The table numbers, I created those in Canva, and then I used that across the library for my marking the books so that kids knew where to find things. The Are You As Tall, that's also a Book Wrangler product. And then the last one, every morning I put music on my board, and I put a nature scene on my board, and I put essential oils in my diffuser. And because so many of my students are coming from traumatic home lives, I have a lot of students who just come into the library, they stay for 3 minutes, they kind of center their day, and then they go to class. They're not checking out a book every day, but they know that that's their place to just kind of get calm before they progress through their day. And it's become a safe space for them, and that's the library being the heart of the school. And it took very little work on me to put some music on the board and a pretty picture, but it helps them feel confident at school. So being broke, if you need supplies, wish lists and mom swaps are excellent ways to get materials for your library. A boutique that I shop at, they had teachers post their Amazon wish list at the beginning of the year. Those magnet tiles came from a woman in Florida whose mom was a librarian, and she wanted to buy something in honor of her mom, who was a librarian. And now my kids get magnet tiles to play with. The Duplo box are from a mom swap. They were giving them away for free because their kid had outgrown them. And that's a 5th grader playing with Duplos. And we had just finished the I Have a Dream speech. And so that's the Lincoln Monument, and that's all of the people watching MLK give his speech. And you can see his pride and a little bit of my my students' characteristics. But he was so proud of how something that, 3-year-olds play with, but for him it brought him joy. And here's some other examples of how to cover up the ugly. The top of the desk was this terrible, I like your nicotine description, terrible aged beige color. So I got removable wallpaper from Target, and now it's Happy Clouds. And I used the book wrangler and his rainbow book covers, and I rainbowed the front of the desk. So instead of being this sucker of light, now it gives off light and it gives off life. And it's so simple, but it looks happy. And the kids come in and they want to know about the different books. They want to know if we have the different books. And then because I had to get my shelving from a school that was getting rid of them, they were double-sided shelves, but I can only use one side of them, and I needed to cover up the ugly. So I used our poster maker, and I created those bubble pages, and I used painter's tape to kind of make the edge look finished. And then I put those affirmations on there so that when you walk by the library, you don't see the back side of an empty shelf to mask the ugly. A lot of what I had to do was masking the ugly because there weren't any other resources. And so while it could be considered lipstick on a pig, when you see it, it doesn't look like it's secondhand. And I didn't want the kids feeling like they were only as good as secondhand products. So I wanted to do anything that I could to make it feel fresh and exciting for them until, hopefully this is not always gonna be this case. Hopefully we will get nice new furniture. But for now, they don't have to feel like they are just getting somebody's used products, because so much of what they get is used products. So there's the terrarium idea that I stole.
Love a terrarium.
A third grade teacher was getting rid of her fish. She didn't need her fish tank. I took the fish tank and I planted plants in there. And the fish is our new mascot. The kids voted on his name. They've named him Bluey, and they are so protective over that fish. If another student gets too close and Bluey gets scared, they will protect Bluey. They will come in and they will say hello to Bluey. They will walk over and read to Bluey. And all Bluey is a little betta fish, but they love and have so much pride in that little fish. So if you can bring pets into your library, something simple like a fish, I strongly encourage you to do so. There is a grant out there that gives you $150 a year for a class pet. And so you can apply for that grant, and each year you get $100. So you can buy whatever. You could have gerbils paid for by that grant, and every year all your food is already paid for. You just have to find some place for him to spend the holidays if you're going out of town. So that goes back to, if you want to do it, there's probably a grant for it.
All right, playing your PR wisely. Mary and I were talking about how when we started as librarians, we didn't realize how much of our job was marketing and also PR. So Mary Ann said a good point. She said it's always easy to complain. It's easy to complain about how the library program used to be. It's easy to complain about the space in front of your staff. It's much harder to make sure you're presenting your library as a positive space even when it is in transition. So keep in mind always who you're talking to. You would do that anyway in the building. Keep in mind what you're saying and make sure that you are always promoting the library even as you are building it from nothing into something grand.
Yep. Advocate for yourself, but do it with positivity. You're going to get a lot further if you are optimistic and excited, and you make sure you focus on the library being the heart of the school and the equity that your students need. If you use that word equity when you're asking for things and your principal says no, they kind of seem like a monster. You mean you're telling me you don't believe that our students should have equitable access to what kids down the street have? And it works really well at the district level too, because they don't want to be monsters either. But when you use that word equity, it also puts your heart being there for the students, and that goes back to our main message. And so if you're saying, I want to make sure that my kids have equitable access, it helps to smooth that pathway to being able to ask for more.
Okay, this was something else, moderating your social media consumption. When we were starting out as librarians, I was on Twitter all the time and just looking at what other CCSD librarians were doing. Made my myself crazy. I'm not doing robotics in my makerspace. I need to be doing robotics. I have no time to learn Spiro or play Osmo or anything else. There are great ideas on social media. Protect your mental health. You're working very hard to build a library program. If you're introducing one thing new in the makerspace, maybe it's blocks, it's analog. That's great. Leave it be. Let the kids enjoy the blocks, keep it analog, and then next year add on one more thing. Do not overwhelm yourself with what other great librarians are doing. Bookmark it. Come back to it in 2 years.
Do not feel the need to join every elementary librarian Facebook group or every insert your grade level Facebook group out there, because you are going to end up miserable playing the comparison game. And so we say that just to kind of, do not feel like you need to go on Teachers Pay Teachers and buy every lesson that they have on introducing your kids to the Dewey Decimal System and how they should all learn how to use the library within the first 6 weeks of school, and they need to be able to navigate every aspect of destiny. You're going to burn out, and you are going to be exhausted and unhappy, because that's not where the joy is. Maybe some people get joy from the Dewey Decimal System. I don't. And so when I felt that pressure that I needed to have them coloring the books that would go on each shelf, because that's what the elementary library Facebook page said I should be doing in the first 2 weeks of school, it wasn't fun. The kids weren't having fun. We just wanted to read and be excited about reading. And the coolest thing about being a librarian is you always have books. Your lesson does not have to be planned bell to bell, because if you finish a little early, there's books, and the kids can read, and that's where the joy comes from. So, because I transitioned from a classroom teacher, I had that bell-to-bell mentality in my head that everything needed to be over-planned, and everything needed to be standards-based, and we had to make sure that we were going to get those test scores. And it took a while for me to transition from that learning for a test score to learning for the love of learning, and really being able to do that. And I think that's what makes being a librarian better than any other job in the school, is that we get to love learning. Yes, we have standards. Yes, we have benchmarks. Yes, we have goals. All of those are important, but we get to love learning in the library, and it's the coolest part of the job.
My teachers are very invested in the students learning the Dewey Decimal System, and when we moved to a fully flexible library, that was a big concern. How will students learn the Dewey Decimal System if they're not seeing the librarian on a special area schedule? So I know most of my staff does not know the Dewey Decimal System either. So I had a PD, and we started the PD with the Kahoot, and it was all questions about Dewey Decimal, and everybody failed. And that's okay, because right after the Kahoot, then I had my staff go through a PD with how to use the Dewey Decimal System. And hopefully that taught some of my naysayers that it's okay if you don't know a Dewey Decimal System. I don't know it all either. And we're all working out just fine. The students are reading a lot. The teachers are pulling out books a lot. We're doing lots of interlibrary loans. We have reading contests. Everyone is engaged. It is okay if we do not know exactly how the library is organized. That is our last slide. We wanted to open up to questions from you, comments from you, things you've been experiencing, questions you might have for us. Yes, ma'am.
In my first library interview, I asked to see the library, and they looked dumbfounded. Like, you want to go down and actually look through the spaces you're going to be in for 8 hours a day? And they're like, okay. So I was like, I need to see the space I'm going to be working in, and I did that in my last library interview. They're like, you used to work here so many years ago. I said, yes, but so many years ago, there was a lot of time things can change.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a wise move. I think also, I don't know if before your interview, but our district library coordinator, Christy James, gave me some statistics before my interview. So even though I hadn't seen the space, I knew the collection was very old. I knew we had a lot of books that hadn't been checked out for a very, very long time. So going into an interview, if you have a coordinator who can kind of give you something to go into the interview with, so you can talk to your principal, what are our goals for this library based on what the collection currently is at? Your principal might not even know that. They see a lot of books in a library, they assume everything's okay.
I'd love to know more about what your schedule looks like. If you're fully flex, how does that work?
Being fully flexible, it's been great. So usually I go find the teachers, since we're doing EL, I know what each each teacher is doing every day. 3rd grade's doing frogs, 5th grade's doing rainforest. I try to look back in my notes, what have I done with 5th grade all this year? We've done something with Spiros, we've done something with app smashing on the iPads. I want to do a breakout now. I find the resource, and then I just email the most gung-ho 5th grade teacher. I have them do it, and they tell the other 3 5th grade teachers. The other 3 might not do it, but then at least we're getting the ball rolling. I don't tend to go to PLCs. I don't tend to go to grade level meetings. Teachers I find, are very stressed for time during their grade level meetings. They're really not looking for me to be yakking in their ear about cool stuff we could do in the library. So really, it is a truly self-created schedule where I might have a day with 4 lessons back to back in the morning, and then the whole afternoon is just planning my next lessons that are coming up next week, which was a big change for my teachers too, because my teachers would see me on my laptop in the library working, and the library is empty. And they want to know why. Like, why does she get to do work at her laptop? My kids are with me all day. Why isn't this library on a special area schedule? So that took a lot of time to understand. I am working on your lesson. You're coming in 3 hours. Don't worry, I'm working very hard for you. We really appreciate you coming. If you have questions for us now, if you want to come talk to us privately, that would be great. I hope you enjoy your new library programs. I hope you're all moving into great situations. And feel free to reach out to us if you have questions.